Chasing Ghosts on Scooters in Bars, the podcast that blends the modern scooter lifestyle with a twist of the paranormal over a cool cocktail. So here we are with Season 1, Episode 6 of Chasing Ghosts on Scooters in Bars.
It shocks me that you've made it to 6 episodes.
They say if you can get to 7, you might be able to make it work.
I'm surprised you got to 3, but here we are at 6. That's crazy.
A couple of quick reminders who we are. We are a group of Vespa riders, scooter riders, in search of adventure in the afterlife, in bars and pubs, really in dive bars and classic pubs and haunted taverns. So, we're just dudes that ride around looking for action.
Well, you say we. I think it's mostly you, and we're following you and your journey. We want to document what you go through. Well,
and other people go through it as well. There are people that work in pubs, hotels, restaurants that are haunted every day. I mean, it happens all the time. And we are asking for those stories, especially in our area, Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, Everett, Bellingham, all the way down to Longview or even Eastern Washington. In fact, we've even loaded our scooters and trailers and gone out of state. But if you have a story, if you hear this, if you're a scooter rider, contact us at chasingghosts.net. There's a submit button where you can just send us a quick email or record something and send it. Or my email address is markh@chasingghosts.net. That goes to all of us. We have a Facebook page. It's at Chasing Ghosts Pod. Twitter page at Mark Helgen, and on Instagram as well with Mark Helgen. If you want to get in touch with us, Google Scooters, Ghosts, and Bars, and we're the only people that come up.
That doesn't surprise me, but now, and there are vast downloads of, I don't know how many we've got, but have you heard back from anybody on suggestions or ideas?
Yes, actually, I've got some really nice stuff. The one was up in Seattle, the Black Bottle, I believe. It's an old hospital and morgue that's now a bar in Belltown. And got some really good feedback on Facebook about how all kinds of things are going on in that place. That
sounds right up your alley.
I think
a morgue, a hospital, and a bar.
Yeah, so I could just finish myself off there.
Yeah, if you can't take care of your business there, then.
Speaking of business, we want to remind everybody we're about bars, we're about scooters, we're about ghosts, but we do not endorse drinking and driving, drinking and scooters, and we really keep an eye on that. So please don't let our enthusiasm for cocktails think that we're drinking them while we're riding our scooters. We wait till we land.
That's right. Don't let us fool you.
We're also planning our big pub scoot for 2017, Mark. And while I say that, before you jump in, do you know who's here with us today?
Is it the legendary Bobby Chong?
Bobby Chong has joined us.
Hello.
Bob.
Hello.
So we had the Lizard last episode. We got Bobby Chong this episode.
It's a big win.
Nice. And I'm very impressed so far.
Oh, nice. So we're planning our Pub Scoot 17. Bobby Chong, you are my partner this year in planning it. And
yes.
We're going to do what's called a vintage ride.
That's correct. We're going to do some of the old routes that we started with.
Back 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, at least.
You started this whole idea. This was your deal.
Yeah, well, it's evolved.
It certainly has. We're staying in nicer places. You and I stayed in a tent.
We had a tent.
This year...
Nothing like the Helgen boys pitching a tent out in the woods.
Yeah.
And trying to start a fire.
Yeah, pitching something. So this year we're going to be heading into Vashon Island. We're going to go to the hardware store, I think, and have a little brunch. Take a ferry from Tacoma, or if we end up going to Amerivespa, maybe we'll go from Seattle, but hit Vashon.
Maybe get on the ferry and head into Seattle.
Oh, go the other way around.
Yeah.
So let's not plan it on the podcast, Bob. And then we head over to the coast, and we're going to go all the way down the coast of Washington and into Seaside, Oregon.
After our stop in Astoria, which is historic.
It is. Astoria has some great brew pubs, bars. It has a lot of nautical and mariner history.
Oh, it has huge history because it's like when it was supposed to be another country, during the Jefferson time.
I did not know that.
Yes. You should read, there's a book called Astoria.
Well, we're sitting with Mark Shelbert, my co-host, who's a history teacher. He didn't bring that up.
Well, I've heard of Astoria and history.
So there you go.
I just got to put them together.
So Pub Scoot 17 is going to take us all the way down to Seaside, and then we're going to head east, to east side of the freeway, Mark. And
Are you sure?
Yeah. And we're going to head up to...
this is where we get lost.
Mineral and Morton.
Mineral. And then...
Elby, Ashford.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. We're staying a night in Ashford as well.
Yeah.
Boy, that's deep.
That's Mount Rainier.
And then head down the hill into Ording and that area. I think we'll get ourselves about 550 to 600 miles in 4 days.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And I think we can hit somewhere between 33 and 40 bars.
Yes, I would guess right in that.
Well, when you're ambitious and thirsty, it's bound to happen.
And in my case, I'm in search of the paranormal.
That's right.
Amerivespa. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, what is that? Well,
Amerivespa is the Vespa Club of America puts on an annual convention, really, for scooter riders, and they go to different cities and each year. And this year it's in Seattle, and they're expecting well over 1,000 new scooter riders not from this area to come in and take rides on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the weekend that we're going on our pub scoot.
Wow, and they've reached out to you with your podcasting.
Well, they mentioned something about us showing up on a meet and greet in the stables in Georgetown on opening night. And I think that maybe we should adjust our ride a little bit, even though we've made some reservations along the way to go there and share our podcast or get some stories or talk to people about what's going on.
It certainly sounds exciting. Might have to be discussion at our safety meeting.
Well, I'm thinking the safety meeting will actually be at Amerivespa.
Well, that's an idea.
It's at the stables. Now, if you remember our last podcast, it was about Jules Mays Saloon. The stables is actually located right behind them.
Well, then we know how to get there.
Adjacent to their rear parking lot. So
absolutely. I mean, and then just around the corner is the La Hacienda Hotel.
Nice. So maybe we could stay in Georgetown on our first night or maybe we have a bonus day.
That sounds exciting. I've heard of a bonus episode.
Yeah, now we have a bonus day. We go from a 4-day ride. It used to be a 3, and once in a while it's a 2 to a 5-day ride.
Well, we
and
call
it includes
a 4
a big
bonus. That way the wives won't get too upset that we're stretching
4 days plus a bonus ride.
It's a 4-day bonus.
Right. That's as close as we get to a boner with our wives. So our last ride, we went, if you guys remember, we went to Tacoma. I'm calling this the hometown haunt. We went to several, we all played hooky from work, and we got on our scooters amidst the rain off and on, and we went to Red Hots in Tacoma. You guys remember that place?
Yeah, we needed a snack. It was a great place to get a bite to eat.
Yes, it was.
It's a favorite among scooter riders. I see them all the time. There's a big scooter club in Tacoma that is called Firkin.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, well, we've run across them at the Parkway. We've run across them at the at Red Hots. So I think this is a regular place for scooter riders. But more importantly, they have a great hot dog.
Well, I've heard this before at bars, but they asked Bobby, do you want the usual? Bobby's obviously been there a few times.
Bobby Chong.
And it was the Hosmer, by the way.
It used to be. It's now the Hound Dog, and it's a hot dog with peanut butter, bacon. And
I add yellow mustard.
I add coleslaw and yellow mustard. Yeah, that's fabulous. And we had lunch at Red Hots. From there, we went to Doyle's. If you remember, it was a very windy day.
Right.
So
but I think the paranormal met us there because that was the only place that we've been to all day that had no power.
We did. We walked inside Doyle's. We saw the bartender. She looked at us. The place was dark. And she said, "Are you guys hungry?" And we said, "No, we just want to have a drink." And she said, "Get your asses in here."
Yeah, she was convincing.
So what I love about the Irish.
Yeah, so we did. We went into Doyle's and had a round, and the Lizard parked his truck.
The Lizard met. Why? What do you mean his truck? What happened to his scooter?
Well, if our last podcast, he was here and he talked about driving down from Burien. On the way home, he might have had a little whoop whoop. Yeah, he went down. He put his scooter down, and
is he okay?
Well, he's sore. He broke 3 ribs, but he is okay, and he has a good sense of humor about it. His wife is in the healthcare business, so she made sure he was
checked out,
sleeping comfortably.
That would explain why he got out of the truck like an 80-year-old
and sort of
and barely made it across the street.
Yeah. So he joined us at Doyle's, and then from there we headed to the Swiss.
Right.
And we went to the Swiss where we talked to Casey. The Swiss is notoriously haunted, so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then from there, we went up to the new Seven Seas Brewery, which is in the old Heidelberg brewery building, which is huge, this big, huge building. They've moved over from Gig Harbor, and that was a real treat. We had a great time there. And then left the Seven Seas and headed down to Pacific Brewing, where we talked to Joseph. We got a tour of the back.
That'll be a good story there.
And it's in the old Tacoma City Hall stables where they would bring in the prisoners and on horseback and walk them through a tunnel into the old City Hall jail. So this place is just on fire, haunted. We got a couple of great stories there. We actually met a group of people from New York that were on vacation, and they joined us and sat around while we did our podcast. Remember that?
Oh, I do. It's a fun group.
And then we went back to the Swiss to meet Monkey.
Who's Monkey?
Well, Monkey is the longest running bartender at the Swiss, and he was supposedly had been haunted, but he chose not to talk to us about it. But even better, he bought us a drink.
Oh, that's right. That's why I remember that stop fondly.
Right. And from there, we headed home in the rain, sideways, with the wind blowing at about 40 miles an hour.
Pecking at our face with every drop.
So we're going to finish this by introducing Casey at the Swiss. We did bring up the fact that Lonnie, the Lizard, had a little issue last time we were talking, and we brought him back just to fill us in. What happened?
Well, make sure he's still alive. We need proof.
Well, there is proof that I am still alive, and it's been 4 weeks already since I had my little mishap. And 3 broken ribs are doing fine, and I think I'm back in action.
Well, you look great,
but more
Lonnie.
importantly, how's your scooter?
My scooter's got a little road rash, but nothing that a couple stickers won't hide, and I think we're going to be okay.
In fact, we have a new Chasing Ghosts on Scooters and Bars sticker. It'll be on our website soon for just $9.95. I'll give you one for your broken scooter.
10 off.
Right, you're an employee. All right, let's go with Casey from the Swiss, who's going to fill us in on the light. So, hey, I'm with Casey at the Swiss in Tacoma, and we are talking about this very cool and historic bar that's been around. Do you know how long,
The building's been around since the 1890s, late 1890s. It's been the Swiss Hall since 1913. And then we've been the Swiss for about 24 years now.
Nice. And, we're called Chasing Ghosts on Scooters in bars. You're a bartender.
Yep.
You have a scooter.
I do.
And we're talking ghost stories.
Yep.
So why don't we talk a little bit about yours? Tell us about what happens at the Swiss.
So there's one tiny little light on our ramp. And at night, if this light gets turned off, weird things happen. And it doesn't matter if there's people here or if it's empty. Things will fall off the walls that have been nailed down, or things will be moved that you can't move without 2 people, or a light that's been out for a month will work again all of a sudden. And it's just this one tiny little light in our middle room on our ramp, And the first thing you get trained when you train to close here is you never turn that light off. Ever.
So it's part of the closing procedure?
It is. You don't turn it off.
So, and it's because things happen if you leave it off.
Our head bartender will tell you he does not believe in ghosts, but don't turn the light off because we're haunted.
And his name is
Monkey.
Monkey. And he's going to be here at about 4 o'clock.
Yep, he will be.
Nice.
And
So-
he's seen most of the crazy stuff. I've seen one morning where stuff was moved and lights were weird and switches didn't work properly, but he's seen the stuff that, like I said, he doesn't believe, but he believes in our ghost.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's the ramp? What is that?
The ramp is just in our next room, and it's just to there's a step up onto our dance floor,
Right.
and we just have a ramp to move equipment or wheelchairs or just more accessible. And our beer, when we stock beer, we bring it down the ramp and stuff. There's just a little light so that you don't trip on anything at night when it gets dark in here.
And do we have a history of why that might be a problem here?
I have no idea. I know it's been going on since before we were the Swiss bar. When the back half where our midroom is, where the light is, used to be a creamery. And so when we bought it and tore the wall down, they told us that there might be something weird going on. They never saw evidence of it. And I have no idea why. It's this light that prevents everything, but it's just, if it's on, we're fine. If it's not, weird stuff happens.
Hopefully you put an LED bulb in there that'll never go out.
Oh, yeah.
And my friend, who's not sitting here next to me, Mark, but he's my co-host on the podcast, is Swiss.
Okay.
So maybe he knows something about the
He
creamery.
might, yeah.
Anyway, well, I'm going to wait for Monkey.
Okay.
I hope to get to talk to him. And
Yes, it's a good
Casey,
job.
nice job, and thanks for sharing with us.
Yeah, anytime.
All right. So in a separate interview with Casey, she talked about the bar trough and peeing at the bar.
Well, there was more to KC than first appeared. I just thought maybe we'd have a ghost story, whatever she experienced, but she was full of quite a bit of knowledge.
Yeah, let's learn about our anatomy now. Casey, you were just telling us some history about the bar. You gave me a photo album, and then you told us about the ceiling. But tell us about the original bar and when this part started.
Yeah, so the original bar is here from 1913. The front part of the building used to be a general store, and the back was a creamery. But we have the original bar top, the original back, and we uncovered the original ceiling from when it was bought out before, and they covered it with a lower ceiling. So we tore that all down, did major construction, and we left the trough under the bar top.
Trough? What do you mean trough?
There's a little trough underneath the bar that used to have running water in it with a drain. And back in the 70s, women weren't allowed to sit at the bar top. So in order to discourage gentlemen from standing up and figuring out exactly how drunk they were, the trough was there so they could sit at the bar top and pee and spit their chew as well.
So surprisingly, my brother, Bobby Chong, right here, in our first podcast, talked about the fact that he drinks small amounts of alcohol so he doesn't have to pee too much. And this would have been perfect for him.
Well, drinking small amounts of alcohol isn't going to do anything for breaking the seal because it's a nerve reaction within your bladder. Once the neurons in your bladder are excited, no matter how much fluid you have in your bladder, it's still going to make you feel like you have to pee because your neurons are excited.
Historical and medical knowledge.
And what is it that gives you the neuron sensory?
So when you pee, your neurons are going to shut off. They're not going to be excited anymore when you're not drinking alcohol. When you drink alcohol, once you pee and they're excited, they don't go back to their base state. They just stay excited and keep telling you your bladder's full even if it's not.
Got it.
So now there's some answers for while we are chasing ghosts on scooters in bars and having to pee so often. We're not really drinking that much, Bob. We're just excited.
And Bob, you can't pee at the bar anymore though, so don't
Once
do
you're
that.
turned on,
How do you know I haven't already?
So not only did we get a great story, we've learned something about our anatomy.
it's a win-win.
Which way
It's
to
a
go?
win. Thank you, Casey.
You're welcome.
Oh man, that Casey, she's an anatomy expert.
I had no idea she was full of so much knowledge.
I've never in my life heard of a trough under a bar where you can sit there and pee while drinking. It's sort of like a continuous flow.
Well, but to the Swiss, it makes a lot of sense.
I guess so. So we got on our scooters, we walked out, we got on our scooters in front of the Swiss and headed down the hill and ended up at Pacific Brewing, which is in the annex building to the old clock tower building in Old City Hall in Tacoma, which, by the way, was purchased by McMinimans.
Well, that would be nice.
Yeah, I can hardly wait till they move in there. There in the Elks Club, I think they bought that as well.
Right.
Where I took a picture of you on the stairs. It's on our Facebook page.
Yep.
So we got down to Pacific Brewing, and named after a long ago brewing company that used to be down there, and they found evidence of underground rooms, right, and tunnels.
Yeah, we've heard about the Shanghai story before from other bars in that area in Tacoma.
Yeah, so I read something online where they had to kind of slow down construction or remodeling because they had to. There was some preservation stuff that happened.
Well, permits and things, get in the way because of the history of the entire place.
But while we were there, we talked to Joseph. Is that correct?
Right. I believe that was Joseph at the bar. Friendly guy, but kind of busy.
He's
almost too busy for us.
He was almost too busy, but we set up our little studio.
We waited him out.
We met some people in the bar that were from New York, Long Island.
Yeah, about 7, 8 of them traveling.
Right.
It was their last day in Tacoma.
Right.
They're about to head back.
Yeah, nice group. We invited them to join us while we interviewed Joseph. He told us stories about the Pacific Brewing Company and then took us for a tour in the back. But before we get there, let's hear from Joseph about what happens in this crazy little annex that
used to house horses.
And they would take
criminals.
They'd walk the criminals into the jail. And Jake Bird, the famous serial killer, was taken in that way. So there's activity.
Tacoma's first serial killer, right?
I think one of the first serial killers that actually was noted as that. Here is Joseph now. In fact, we're going to make you wait a little bit like we did. Okay, now, here he is. We're with Joseph at Pacific Brewing, and he is in a bar that's in the basement of the old Tacoma City Hall. And he's going to tell us a little bit about what happens here. First of all, give us the history.
Sure. The original brewery opened up in 1897 here in Tacoma, and the current owners wanted to pay homage to an original brewery here in the city. So when they had the vision to open up a brewery, they went and educated themselves on local breweries that were open at that time, one of them being Pacific Brewing in 1897. Actually, off of about 25th and Jefferson was the original warehouse. Here in our tap room, we have pictures everywhere of the original brewers, the original tap rooms, and those were all taken from Tacoma's History Museum as well as the Tacoma Library.
And the way the industry was run. You got horses.
Yeah, exactly. So there's one picture in the bathroom where there's a carriage, and that's how beer was moved, other than like the trains and such. But beer was moved to different restaurants and venues at that point, all by carriage. And we had cars at some point in time. I think they upgraded to those, and you'll see some of those sail trucks there in the bathroom. Yeah.
So tell us about what happens with the jail and the horses and all that.
So here, right next to us, so this actually is the annex building next to City Hall. And underneath City Hall was the jail system and the prison, and in between the building is our alleyway, where we right now have shipments that come in and out of our beer. But in that alleyway, buggies would come up with the horses and bring inmates from the alleyway to underground City Hall in their prison system. This is where they would keep all of the horses in this building, in the annex building. So yeah, the police horse, the police steed.
Who was the famous serial killer? The first one known in the United States that got brought in here.
One of them being Jake Bird. Yeah, and he was allegedly killed up to murdered 45 people, I think it was. Yeah.
From, I think, Kansas all the way through.
Correct, yeah. And once he was finally put into prison, he put a hex on the people involved to him being in prison. So the jailers, the judge, the lawyers, everybody involved, he put a hex on, and within a period of time, they all passed away within that year.
Right, yeah.
Every single person involved passed away.
And it's in the Tacoma papers.
It is, yeah. You could look it up, Jake Bird curse. It's a known thing, or the Jake Bird hex. Yeah.
Right. So have you had anything happen in this bar to you?
Yes.
Or people you know?
Yeah, so the brewers, they have issues once in a while where there will be certain valves that they turn off at the end of the night, but those, they'll come in the morning and those are on, or they're open. Another thing with like the boiling tanks, those will be on for some reason when they come back to brew in the morning. The brewers have a strict procedure that they follow by, and there's no way that they would be able to forget something like that. Another thing for myself is you have kegs that'll move, you think they fell on the back, and I'll go over there, check it out, and a keg is falling in the back. And that's really strange when that happens. We've had people have scrapes on their hands, and that has to do with just kind of tormenting or not tormenting, but hassling, I guess you could say, like the spirits or the room. There's one room in particular, the grain room, where everybody feels kind of weird. And that's there in the very back. It seems kind of like off-putting and cold in that room. And then when you're alone, it's just kind of strange. And such an old building, it's always moving. So, yeah.
What's really cool is that as you were talking about some of those things, the EVP meter, or the EMF meter went lit right up.
Yeah.
So it's really
that's
surprising.
Funny. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the beer you sell here.
Sure.
So that we can get that on the podcast.
So we got a couple things here at Pacific Brewing that pay homage to the original stuff. We have the Potomac Citra Pale Ale. There was a Potomac tasting room here in Tacoma where our beer was sold and brought to you, and you can go and try all the beer that was brewed by Pacific. Another one being the Dirty Scoot. That was rumored to be...
I have one of those.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I rode here on my scooter.
Right,
Dirty Scoot.
Right,
okay.
Yeah. There's
in the nicest way possible.
After the Prohibition, the Dirty Scoot was rumored to be a speakeasy here in Tacoma.
Nice.
And yeah, that was the nickname for it, the Dirty Scoot. So we have our double IPA based off of that. Grit City Porter, obviously the Grit City is Tacoma, the gritty city. And then 1897 Pale Lager, that was when Pacific Brewing opened up. And then we have the Red Front Northwest Red is something that we just created for, the Northwest style of beer that we're making. So,
Now, Joseph, you also talked about how long this bar has been.
Sure.
It hasn't been a bar. It opened when?
So Pacific Brewing opened in 1897, shut its doors in 1915, a year prior to Prohibition. We opened up this tap room here in 2014 September. So this year in September will be our 3rd year anniversary. Yeah.
So nice job. And so come to Pacific Brewing if you're in Tacoma or anywhere nearby, because a great selection of beers, wonderful room with a little bit of spirits going on.
And two huge double doors to come into.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Park up above, walk down the stairs.
Okay, that was fascinating. I'm telling you what, I didn't know all that about the Pacific Brewing Company.
Yeah, I'm glad we went down there. We'd been there one other time. We got some stickers for our scooters, but we did not get stories.
Right. Well, I'm glad we waited. You were not very happy. You were about to leave.
Well, I mean, he was busy. I wasn't upset. I just knew he needed to pour.
But I was surprised that the traveling group was so interested in the ghost stories and jumped right into the interview.
They did. And as a matter of fact, one guy was a huge independent podcast follower, and he found us and subscribed while we were sitting there. And speaking of which, please, all of you, subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Right.
We may have just doubled our audience. But yeah, he did a great job. And the ghosts are real in Tacoma. Not that I'm a believer, but based on everything I'm seeing, because you know a group that specializes in
the Tacoma Ghost Tour.
Right.
They're the Hansen family. They've done a lot of research. I've been on the tour a couple of times.
Well, you drug a big group of us.
A private tour. We took a private tour, and Andrew did a great job. He took us through and told great stories, and it's amazing. This boom town back. It's a railroad town, and the Tacoma Hotel. The theaters, the buildings. I mean, I think I might have to move there.
Well, he blended the history and the paranormal very well. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Much like we blend the paranormal and the scooters.
Right. They just kind of skip the bars part of it.
So thank you to Tacoma Ghost Tours for their great information and their contribution to teaching us all about Tacoma.
Right.
As a break-in, Mark, I was able to capture Andrew from Tacoma Ghost Tours.
Now, this is a great get by you.
Yeah, thank you.
Andrew's got a lot to offer.
Well, he's very busy. He's very active on social media, and he's taken thousands of people on the Tacoma Ghost Tour.
Well, he knows his route and his history. He's a fascinating individual.
And has some concrete evidence of ghosts in Tacoma. I mean, he doesn't bring it up in his ghost tour as much, the physical evidence, but he does in other areas. And we were able to spend a little time with him at Brandy's Attic, which is a antique store on Broadway that is very, very active and haunted, and they do public ghost hunts in there.
Well, and one of the things I've always wondered, when you talk about serial killers, for example,
he's very.
What makes a real serial killer?
We're going to find out. We're going to find out when we talk to Andrew, and that's going to be right now before you go too far. And we're including the Lizard on this conversation, right?
The Lizard has met Andrew before, and he's an interesting guy, and I enjoy his contribution.
So here he is. Okay, I'm with Andrew Hansen. He's the owner of and operator of Tacoma Ghost Tours.
We are the first longest running paranormal walking tour in the city of Tacoma. We first showed up October 1st, 2012. We originally started just my father and I, who's also my business partner, standing in front of the Pantages Theater, hoping people would show up for the tour. Now we've expanded into 3 presentations now. We cover downtown, the Stadium District. And what we do is we just take paranormal accounts, almost all of which we hear from firsthand from just people we talk to. Then we look into the history of that location, surrounding area, present what we find to the public, if there's anything at all. We don't try to convince anybody ghosts are real, anything of the sort. It's just, if these weird accounts are being caused by a ghost, we think we might have found at least one of the sources. So it's just for fun, food for thought.
And that's right here at Brandy's Attic, correct?
Yes, our main #1 tour, most popular, known as Old Downtown, or just simply downtown, starts here where we're at Brandy's Attic Antiques, 755 Broadway Street. This is our #1 tour. Been doing it since 2012. It's 90 minutes long because this area of Tacoma is northern downtown theater district. I think there's a few other names you can call it. While this area has the highest concentration of supposedly haunted locations in the city of Tacoma, and has a very large amount of history to back it up. So it works perfect for our business and our model all day, every day.
And you've done a lot of research. I really like the stories and the history that you put along with the paranormal experiences that people have shared with you. And so I want to congratulate you on that, because it's as much a history tour as it is a paranormal ghost walk.
Yes. That's the thing we encounter a lot, where people will make the mistake of thinking it's like a haunted house or something of the sort. We're going to jump out and scare you. But as you've seen, and you've probably spoken with and been on other tours like this, when it comes to businesses labeled as the ghost tour, paranormal tour, things of that sort, it's the same type of model. It's history with some ghost accounts, because if you have basically ghosts without history is nothing more than a very short, brief campfire story. Because even like the most classic urban legends, the one like the guy with a hook on his hand on the door of the 2 people making out, that has at least some element of history. It's always from back in 1955 this urban legend was taking place. So all of this has at least some amount of history to it. And without it, then this tour would probably, every one of our tours would probably fit into a single hour. Like that's just without history. That's
and you do a great job. Our podcast, which you're aware of, is as we blend the modern scooter lifestyle with a twist of the paranormal over a cool cocktail. Yeah. So we take all our favorite things and we put them all together. And 2 of the places that we're looking at for this podcast is the Swiss Tavern, which is a historical building uptown a little bit in the warehouse district, I believe. And then also the Pacific Brewing, which is in the old stables for the city hall. And it's where they used to bring in the prisoners and the horses. They'd haul them in and then pull them through. It's next door to the city hall or below it a little bit. And you have some stories, especially about Jake Bird. Yes. And maybe you could share a short version of that with us, because we're told by Pacific Brewing, he went in that way.
Yeah, Jake Bird, this is probably the one story we share on our current presentations that actually deals with a serial killer. One thing that we try to present to people is a part of Tacoma's history, the scary side of it that's not so well known. Most people recognize Tacoma and Tacoma history as being full of killers and whatnot, so that's to be expected on any tour like this in the city. But when it comes to Jake Bird, so many bad things are sourced from Tacoma. Like this is where Ted Bundy was born. A lot of bad things like that. We have such a reputation for producing these type of bad people. But with Jake Bird, he was actually a killer that was stopped in our city. The one serial killer that I can think of that was stopped here. Yeah, this man, he was a drifter, went place to place on the railroad. He's originally from Alabama.
How long ago?
This was back in the 1940s. I believe he showed up in Tacoma in 1947. He had been drifting around the country for numerous years. Exactly how long, no one, I don't think anybody really knows. But when he showed up in Tacoma, not all that long after he arrived, he broke into a house that was up in the Hilltop neighborhood, just southwest of where we are now. The house where this location is no longer the same place. So even if you knew the address, it's not the same house. But he broke in the middle of a robbery, I'll just call it. He murdered a young woman and her young daughter with a hatchet. He was captured very quickly afterwards. It took him a little bit longer than they thought, because at one point the officers had cornered Jake in an alley. He pulled out a knife, stabbed one of them in the arm, got away for a few more minutes. Then they caught him. More than likely roughed him up a little bit more than usual. But then they took him to Old City Hall, threw him in there. Eventually he was taken to other courts. He was handed a death sentence for the murders in Tacoma. The information he gave up while he was waiting to go to trial convicted him of those crimes, and it also solved 13 additional murders in 4 other states. According to Jake Bird's, according to Bird's own words, he was at least a player in the murder. It's murder and assault of 42 women altogether. But as far as anyone's able to prove, he only provenly killed or assaulted 15 people. So now people always kind of get a chuckle at that when we're on the tour, because it's like, oh, he only killed 15 people. But in the world of serial killers, 15 really isn't that big of a number. Like if it was proven he got to 40, then that would be a really big deal. You get 20 and above is referred to as prolific killers, and in that world, Jake is like, not so much.
He's an average
just
performer.
Average. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, but yes, he was eventually taken. He was eventually convicted. He had appealed the murders numerous times, the Tacoma conviction. And eventually, I believe it was in the very early 50s, he was finally hanged down in Walla Walla State Penitentiary, where his remains are still in their cemetery somewhere. I believe every jail, prison, cemetery, they don't put names on the markers. It's just their number. And way more than one person uses a number for an inmate number. So sure, if you were to find Jake Bird's prison number, you could probably find a gigantic amount of tombstones with that exact same number on it. So it's not open to the public, but if you ever got access to it, you basically will never find him like that.
And he had a curse or something that happened?
Yes. Oh, yes. He was probably, his killings aren't the thing that make him famous. The thing that makes him famous in the world of the mysterious is the hex he laid on people his last day in court. He was handed a death sentence. Before they took him off to hang him, they gave him opportunity to make a final statement to the court. He turns to everybody at the front of the court, and he says, "All you guys who had anything to do with this trial are going to die before I do." Now, it's historically proven fact. Within 1 calendar year of that statement, 6 of the 8 people that he hexed all died for the exact same reason, with severe heart attack. This was so just weird and mysterious at that time, it led one of the 2 supposed survivors, the prosecuting attorney, man named Paul Sheldon, to come out in multiple publications with a statement so basically along the lines of, "Who knows if the Jake Bird hex is real, but if it is, I hope I'm not the next victim." So at least that man was vocally afraid of it. He firmly believed, like so many of others have felt the same way, where there's a little bit more to it than just his words.
And is he thought to still haunt the jail?
We believe so, that it's most likely because he spent time there, and the times that he was there and the time period he was there were common for police to use just brutal, heavy-handed tactics, even against minor criminals. If you went to jail in the 40s, you're probably going to get beat by basically everybody. Jake, he probably got it worse than because of the crimes he committed and then the things he just readily admitted to. And it was more than just murder. That's what I always tell people on the tour is it's a family. The tour that we speak of this on, it's a family-friendly tour. So there's certain things we'll remove, and that's the real nature, or the true nature of his crime. Like he did not all he did in Tacoma was just murder the 2 women, but that wasn't his original plan. Like, that was what he's going to do after the first thing. So he's just a very terrible person. Really don't need to know more about his crimes, but it's just...
There's lots of information and pictures of him online.
Oh, yes. And well before we ever showed up, our business showed up, you could find things about him because it's just such a weird case for Tacoma and Washington State. Like, we're just known to send these guys out into the world as opposed to put a stop to the reign of terror. Right. So, yeah, you can find more about it if you're interested.
This is just a touch of the great tour that Andrew puts on, or tours, and I've experienced them myself, and they are astoundingly good.
Oh, thank you very much.
And so we're gonna stop there. Andrew Hansen, Tacoma Ghost Tours. TacomaGhostTours.com.
Yes.
You also have an active Twitter page.
Yes.
And Facebook.
It's all the same. Facebook.com, Twitter.com/Tacoma Ghost Tours.
So I highly recommend, if you come to Tacoma, you go on the tour. And if you live here and you haven't, you're missing out, because there's tons of things to learn about this city. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, my questions are answered. I now know what a real serial killer is in terms of numbers. How many?
That means you're just an amateur.
I've got some work to do.
We're excited that Andrew has agreed to do future podcasts with us, provided he likes what we're doing here, and very popular guy.
So that's touch and go then.
Well,
it could drop at any episode.
Anyway, TacomaGhostTours.com, all over Twitter, all over Facebook, and all over Tacoma. These guys have got it going on. Wow, I think we had a lot of stuff on this particular podcast. I'd like to say thank you to the Swiss Tavern, the Pacific Brewery, the Tacoma Ghost Tours. All are staples of the Tacoma area and have been very, very nice to work with, and we really appreciate it.
Well, who knew Tacoma had so much to offer? And there's so many more stops to do.
In fact, Andrew brought some up that we're going to bring up in a future podcast.
Right. But didn't you go back to the Swiss for more interviews?
Well, I didn't really go back for more interviews. I went there for lunch. I was looking to do an event.
You devil.
Yeah, separate life, my boat life, and met Jack, the owner.
The owner of the Swiss?
Yes, nice.
How in the world did you get the access to Jack?
Well, Jack was behind the bar doing some paperwork, and told him we were working on this little podcast, and he told me about Big Andrew. So there he was working in this older.
What year are we talking? What decade?
Well, this was yesterday. And,
when you're talking about this guy.
Well, so not long ago, this older guy, very old guy, comes in and says, "I haven't been here since 1944." And Jack, the owner, said, "Whoa, you waited a long time to come back to our bar." And he said, "Well, I had a little problem. My brother-in-law was coming out of the bathroom over there, and I shot him.
What?
I killed him." In fact, Jack said that the women that work in the kitchen, which is not adjacent to the restroom, but it's in the same vicinity, said they always have this feeling of this presence, and it bothers them. And I think that kind of answered the question that Big Andy, who was telling Jack this story, shot his brother-in-law, Deed.
Wow.
Right.
Well, that's why you need a light on.
Well, I don't know if the light on the steps of the ramp is the same problem, but who knows? The brother-in-law,
the dead guy.
Well, the question was, how did your sister feel about that, Andy? And he said, well, he was an SOB. She didn't feel that bad about him killing him. So
well,
anyway,
that was the 40s.
So thanks to Jack and the Swiss and Casey, great people, and Joseph at Pacific Brewing, and Andrew at Tacoma Ghost Tours. I want to remind everybody to please rate and review our podcast on iTunes. It's how we are able to climb up the ranks and get more listeners. And we get great feedback so that we get better at what we're doing.
So, sounds like episode is coming to an end?
This episode, we're wrapping it up. And the Hometown Haunt, which we're calling this, is about coming to a close. Our next one will be doing a southbound ride to Joe's Place in Bakota, and then down to the Olympic Club with McMinimans.
Beautiful.
We're going to be just fine. Yeah. So look forward to that. And thank
we'll have
you.
the Lizard on that trip too.
Lizard
and maybe
be
Bobby Chong?
Bobby Chong.
Absolutely.
Lizard. All right. So here are the weeknights. This podcast and all original music by Weeknights and Mount St. Helgens is copyright by Chasing Ghosts on Scooters in Bars.
Put a ribbon on it.